Welcome to today's webinar on SciENcv and creating your NIH Biosketch. Our speaker today, our presenter, will be Bill Bochick, answering questions on the chat pod, and also afterward in the audio portion is Bart Trawick. You'll be able to get a recording of this webinar in probably about a week on our YouTube channel, the NCBI YouTube channel. Please put your questions into the pod as you think of them, because Bart can answer many of those as we go along. And if you find some particularly common ones, we may address those during the question and answer period after Bill is finished. If you have questions, you can email those to info@ncbi.nlm.nih.gov. And materials for the course you can access either through our course and webinars page or through the FTP site via this usa.gov link showing now. So I'm going to turn it over now to Bill and we'll get started.
Hi everyone, thanks for attending today. Today we're going to be talking about how you create a biosketch with SciENcv. First off, SciENcv is a tool at NCBI that is used to produce biosketches. Biosketches are basically standardized CVs that are submitted as part of a grant proposal process to various government organizations. But before we really get started, I'd like to mention that we can't really take any specific questions to specific NCBI accounts or specific biosketches today. So if you have questions that are specific to your account or specific to your biosketch, please email info@ncbi.nlm.nih.gov, and please make sure you include your MyNCBI username, the name of the biosketch if you have more than one biosketch, and if applicable, your ERA Commons username. As I mentioned, SciENcv is a tool at NCBI, and SciENcv stands for Science Experts Network Curriculum Vitae. SciENcv is a collaborative effort between a number of academic and federal government agencies, and amongst the agencies working on SciENcv are the Department of Defense, the Department of Energy, the Environmental Protection Agency, the National Institutes of Health, the National Science Foundation, and the USDA. SciENcv is a tool primarily to help create biosketches for NIH. Again, the biosketch is a standardized curriculum vitae to be submitted with grant applications. Currently, the NSF is exploring SciENcv as a possible method of creating biosketches, and you can currently create NSF biosketches with SciENcv. And the USDA is starting to work on creating biosketches with us as well. Many academic investigators, when they're applying for grants across different agencies, need to create many different types of biosketches depending on which agency they are requesting a grant from. So there might be one form that needs to be filled out for the Department of Energy, another one still from the NSF, and another one still from the NIH. But it was recognized by the Federal Demonstration Partnership that it would be a great reduction on the administrative load of investigators and of the federal government if the federal government could create a unified tool to help investigators create these biosketches across as many federal agencies as possible, because often investigators will need to enter their citations many times for different forms, and really what we're aiming to do is to just streamline this process as much as possible to make life a little bit easier for everyone. So what does this process look like? Investigators or administrators can come to NCBI or SciENcv with data from their ERA Commons accounts, their NCBI My Bibliography, information from research.gov, which is a website for the National Science Foundation, or ORCID. They can import their citation information and some other basic bibliographic information from these sources, import it into SciENcv, and spruce it up a little bit with some additional information such as IDs, their name, their current affiliation, their educational background, any honors or awards that they've received. Should add personal statements, can add contributions, grants, publications, collaborators, and patents. From this, after including the required information, the output will be a standardized Biosketch for either the NIH Biosketch or the NSF Biosketch. And then the NIH Biosketch should be able to be submitted directly to grants.gov with a grant proposal. And the reason that NCBI has become involved with this Biosketch activity is that many investigators are already creating My Bibliographies through their NCBI accounts to report grant compliance and public access compliance to ERA Commons. So if investigators are already creating their My Bibliographies and already curating a list of their citations, we thought that it could be used easily to then feed into creating biosketches through SciENcv. So here you can see My Bibliography kind of sits at the center of this data stream, where investigators curate their citations in My Bibliography. They report grant compliance to ERA Commons, but they also can export these citations to SciENcv so they don't need to enter their citations again in order to create a biosketch. So the first thing to do if you're going to make a biosketch is to create a NCBI account if you don't have one. And you can do that from the NCBI login page. Just click register for an NCBI account at the bottom of this page. You can find this page from most any NCBI website page. You just need to click the sign in to NCBI here in the upper right-hand corner of the page. Once you click on that link, it will take you to this page. And again, you can click register for an NCBI account to register for a new account. Once you log into NCBI, you'll find that NCBI has a variety of tools that can be customized to your own personal needs. This is the dashboard, or the NCBI dashboard, or the NCBI homepage once you're logged in. And you can see there are many tools here. There's the My Bibliography, which I'll mention briefly. You can create saved searches in PubMed, which will return new results based on your favorite search queries. You can save collections in PubMed. And then, of course, down here in the lower right is a widget for SciENcv, which I'll be talking about extensively here today. Once you have an NCBI account, if you want to import information from another source outside of My Bibliography, you need to make sure that your account is linked to an external account of the appropriate type. And I'm going to show you a little bit about how to do that today. So here we are at the NCBI homepage. It's ncbi.nlm.nih.gov. And I'm going to sign into an NCBI account. So I'm going to click here in the upper right and go to the sign in page for my NCBI. And I'm going to enter in my username and password in this field. And I'm going to sign in. Now I can tell that I'm signed in with this Biosketch demo account because this username is now visible in the upper right-hand corner. You can always tell which username you are signed in with by checking this account name in the upper right-hand corner. If I click on My NCBI now, that's going to take me to my NCBI dashboard. And here you can see, as I had mentioned, here are all the tools that my NCBI account offers, including My Bibliography, Save Searches, and down here we have SciENcv. In order to ensure that my account is linked to the account type that I would like to import information from, I'm going to click on my username in the upper right-hand corner, Biosketch Demo. That will take you to the NCBI account settings page. Down here, this third heading, it says linked accounts. And in this field underneath this heading, all the accounts that my NCBI account is linked to will be listed. So this account is currently linked to an ORCID account. Now I can add or remove linked accounts by clicking on this change button. And that takes me to the linked accounts page. And here you can see it says ORCID is a linked account. And if I click this red X, it will remove the ORCID link to this NCBI account. To add a new account, I can search for an account from the list here. So if I would like to link to an ERA Commons account because I want to import information from ERA Commons, I can click on this link, and then I'll be prompted to enter my ERA Commons username and password. Once I do that, this account would be linked to that ERA Commons account. Once your account is linked to the appropriate accounts that you would like to import information from, you're good to go to start to create your set of information for SciENcv. You can always assign a delegate to curate your account for you if you have an assistant who is able to help you. We've prepared a blog post here on creating delegates for accounts. You can go to this link if you'd like to learn more about that. I don't really have enough time to get into creating delegates today, but you can do so from the linked accounts page. One other thing I'd like to talk about before I get into talking about SciENcv is you might want to ensure that your My Bibliography is complete before you start working on your SciENcv Biosketch, because SciENcv will import information from My Bibliography. If you go here to My Bibliography, you'll find a list of citations that I've added to my Bibliography. You can add citations to My Bibliography by clicking the Add Citation button in the upper right. If you'd like to add a citation from PubMed, you can, as is set by default, you can go to PubMed setting here, and you can search for yourself or any topic that you would like. But if you're looking for your own citations, you're probably going to look for yourself. So if I'm looking for myself, I would search my last name, which is relatively unique, and add the author tag. And this has my citations as already listed in my Bibliography. If I wanted to select one of these to add to my Bibliography, I would select it here by checking the box next to the citation and click the Send To button in the upper right. And I would go to My Bibliography and click Add to My Bibliography. This citation is already in my Bibliography, so I am not going to bother adding it, but rather I'll go back to my Bibliography and see that this citation is already listed here. Now, if I'd like to add a citation that is not in PubMed, I can select a journal article that does not appear in PubMed here from this drop-down menu. And here I can add I can add the bibliographic information for this citation. So I can enter the information here. And click Add Citation, and now I've added a test citation. And you can tell the citations that are not PubMed citations because they will have a little pencil here next to the citation. So once you've completed your My Bibliography and you have your accounts linked, then you can go and start looking at your SciENcv tool. And in SciENcv, this is the sort of SciENcv home widget. You'll see a place for you to enter in a mini profile. So that's information that can be imported to all your biosketches. And then you'll see a list of any existing biosketches and an option to create a new biosketch. If you're to click the Edit button on this mini profile, there you'll have the option of entering in some basic information about yourself. And then you can save it and have it appear in your mini profile, and this information can be fed to all of your biosketches. So then you can start looking at creating a biosketch, and I'm just going to take you here, and I'm going to go to the Manage SciENcv, which takes you to this page that I just showed you in the PowerPoint. So if I go to Create New Biosketch, I'm given several options. I can create a biosketch from scratch here in this tab at the left, which basically means that I will enter in all the information myself. I can create it from an external source, which means that I'll import biosketch information from an external profile. This might be an ERA Commons profile, or an ORCID profile, or a National Science Foundation profile. For instance, if you would like your ERA Commons name to be prominently displayed on your biosketch, you would create from an external source of ERA Commons. Then you can also copy a Biosketch from an existing Biosketch up here, and that way it will import information from an existing Biosketch. Now, if I wanted to create a new Biosketch from an existing Biosketch, I would enter in Biosketch name here, and I would enter in the format that I would be creating. Here I'm going to create an NIH Biosketch, and I'm going to import it from this other Biosketch, Bill's NIH Biosketch. So I'll click Create, and I'll have a new Biosketch created here with all the information that was in my previous Biosketch. So again, you can create a Biosketch from scratch. You can create a Biosketch from an external source such as ERA Commons, National Science Foundation, or ORCID, or you can duplicate an existing Biosketch so that you can tailor an existing Biosketch to the specific grant that you are requesting to be funded. If I wanted to create then a new Biosketch, I'm just going to go back here to my SciENcv widget. I'm going to now create a new Biosketch from scratch, and I'm going to create another Biosketch. It's going to be, and I'm going to create an NIH Biosketch, and this will create an empty Biosketch and that only has information that's imported from my mini profile on the previous page. Here you can see there's nothing listed in any of the fields. So from here, I can start to fill out the Biosketch, and here I can link to a Commons ID if I would like to, so I can start to import information from ERA Commons in this first field. I can enter in education and training in this second field, and here if you click add a degree, I can enter in entering in a school, and then I can select any one of a number of different degrees that I may have attained. And then you can enter in the field of study and the dates. Then, once you've completed that, you can enter a personal statement. And to do this, you can just click on Edit Statement, and here's a personal statement that describes your background and what you're hoping to achieve with the grant proposal. Then you can, to support your personal statement, you may add citations. So I'm going to actually create a test personal statement. So this is my test personal statement. And now I can add a citation or two to support my personal statement. So then I will click Done. And these two citations I've selected are now added in order to support my personal statement. Then I can select, add and select in section B the positions and honors that I've held. So I can add in a position here and an organization, and I can list several. I can also add any professional organizations, and I can add in any honors that I would like to list. In section C, I can list contribution to science. I can add up to 5 contributions to science. And in contributions to science, I can enter in information on whatever I have done to help improve the scientific field in this way. So I'm going to add in a test, contribution to science. And I'll click Save to save that. And then I can add in citations, again, to support my contribution to science. And when I add in citations, I have the option to select from my bibliography, or since my account is linked to an ORCID account, I can select the ORCID tab. So here you can see our publications in ORCID. So if I select these, I've now selected multiple citations from each account. So in that way, you can import from several different accounts and add citations. So I've added these two, the third and the fourth one in my bibliography, and the second and third one in my ORCID account. Now, added into my contribution to science. I can add several contributions to science if I'd like, up to 5. And for each contribution to science, I can add in a selection of citations to support my contribution to science. I also can add a link to a complete list of my work in that is listed in my bibliography. Basically, this will create what we call a public link to my bibliography so that investigators or reviewers can click on the link and see the full bibliography for the investigator. That way, this will be included in my Biosketch. NIH recommends that if you're going to share your full My Bibliography with reviewers, that you use a public link to your My Bibliography, because this way we can ensure that it is a secure, safe connection for reviewers who may be reticent to click on links to unknown sources or personal profiles. So if you would like to include a link to your full citation history, we suggest you do it with a My Bibliography public link as listed here. You are not required to include this link, however. In this final section here, section D, in research support, you can edit awards that are listed in your ERA Commons profile. Basically, you need to have an account linked to an ERA Commons profile if you're going to import awards from ERA Commons. Currently, you can only import awards if you are the PI for the award from an ERA Commons profile. Otherwise, you will have to list the awards manually. However, we are working on creating a tool that will allow you to search for awards in ERA Commons, so that way co-PIs and other contributors will also be able to search for awards and list them directly from ERA and have that information imported directly into section D here. So that is basically it for an NIH Biosketch. Let me just show you a little bit what that section would look like for adding awards if my account had been linked to an ERA profile. So here you would see under the ERA tab a variety of awards listed under a PI. And then you could select the awards and then the relevant awards that you would like listed. And then once you've saved that, this is how the information would be displayed in section D. So that is how an NIH profile is entered. This blue field here at the top refers to metadata that is relevant for operating on the data, and for instance, the status, whether it's private, the profile name, which you can change, and the profile type, and when it's been updated. A note on updating, information that you enter into your Biosketch in SciENcv will be saved automatically, so you don't need to worry about trying to save it before you leave the page. Simply by entering in the information into the window, it will be enough for that information to stay there into the future so that you can close your browser, or maybe your browser crashed. That way you can come back anytime and change the Biosketch and import that information into a new Biosketch if you would like. Let me show you how you can export your Biosketch to a version that you can submit to grants.gov with your grant proposal. So you see here in the upper right in this blue field, there are download options, and you can click any of these download options to export the data within the Biosketch. You can export it in PDF, Word, and XML. The PDF version has been worked out with grants.gov to ensure that this version of the PDF will be acceptable to deposit with grants.gov for a grant proposal. So if I click on PDF, we'll say preparing your file for download, and then here it's given me the PDF. I'm going to open it and you can see what it looks like. So here's the information that I have included just now on my Biosketch. Again, this is what the Biosketch looks like when exported in PDF. We suggest that you, if possible, you export directly from SciENcv into a PDF that you can submit directly with your grant proposal, because hidden within the PDF is a variety of meta information that can be used by grants.gov and automatically import information from your Biosketch, your PDF Biosketch, and does not need to be re-entered manually. Really, the PDF is a superior method of creating a Biosketch. So if you don't need to do any further editing on your Biosketch, we heavily recommend using the PDF export. So the other possible type of Biosketch that you can currently make within SciENcv is an NSF Biosketch. And here I've created an NSF Biosketch here so that you can see. Now this information I can import directly from an NIH Biosketch so that any information that I've already entered in one Biosketch can automatically be imported to another. So my education history was, if it was already entered in an NIH Biosketch, I can now create a new Biosketch from that NIH Biosketch and automatically import this information so that I do not need to enter it again. Same with career history. There are a few differences in the NSF Biosketch profile, one of which is this product section, which will be any previous publications or patents or other information that's related to your current proposal in order to support your case for creating the proposal. You can also list your synergistic activities that demonstrate the impact of your work on the scientific community in the NSF Biosketch. And the NSF Biosketch also includes fields for collaborators and other affiliations. So this will include information such as your current and past collaborators, a graduate advisor, and any students that you may have advised as a professor. So this information is not contained within the NIH Biosketch. You need to enter it into the NSF Biosketch when you create one from an NIH Biosketch. However, since you can import so much information from the NIH Biosketch into the NSF Biosketch, it can save you a considerable amount of time to create from an existing source if you need to create an NSF Biosketch. And again, this is we're currently hoping to build SciENcv to expand it to Biosketches for many different governmental organizations. We're hoping that USDA will come on soon and perhaps some other government organizations. And that way, you will only need to curate a single set of citations and a single set of bibliographic information so that you can share it and quickly create Biosketches and then export them into PDF so that you do not need to take any more time than absolutely necessary to create these. We're hoping to cut the time to create a Biosketch from several hours into perhaps as little as a half hour if you already have a lot of information. Again, I'm just going to show you how the information flow works within my NCBI, SciENcv, and my Bibliography. You curate your full bibliography in my Bibliography with citations to all of your work, and then this information can be exported to SciENcv, which will then automatically be formatted in the correct manner to put into a Biosketch. That way, you don't need to worry about formatting these citations. You don't need to worry about curating many sets of citations for your My Bibliography. You only curate one set of citations regarding your publication history, and that can be exported into SciENcv and used to create many Biosketches in many formats, depending on the desired format for the agency. And again, my Bibliography will also report public access compliance to ERA Commons if you are already accountable for awards given by NIH and need to report compliance for publications produced from those funding sources. I'd like to thank you for listening, and on this last slide here, you can see a variety of helpful links for SciENcv, links to go to the SciENcv homepage, help documents regarding SciENcv, frequently asked questions about SciENcv, frequently asked questions about the NIH Biosketch, and more information about my NCBI and my bibliography. Again, if you have any questions regarding creating a Biosketch with SciENcv or any questions regarding your My NCBI account or your My Bibliography, you can email info@ncbi.nlm.nih.gov. Thank you for listening.
Hi, everyone. This is Bart Trawick. I've been manning the chat question and answer session, and I'd like to thank everyone for participating and especially for giving us feedback. This is a tool that we've been working on and providing to scientists to make their lives easier. And so anything that we can do to make this tool more useful for you and easier to use, we love to hear. Please send us that feedback. Most of the questions that I received during this webinar seem to be revolved around citations, and we are very cognizant of this. We've been working to improve this. It's difficult right now if you have a large collection of citations, to get these into my bibliography. So we're working on an import mechanism in order to have these added into your bibliography much easier so that they're able to be used. We're also working on a feature so that a scientist can limit the number of items that they have linked from their public URL to their bibliography. So thanks for all those questions that we've gotten. And as I said, if you have any other questions or feedback for us, please send it to us at info@ncbi.nlm.nih.gov.
And just one more thing before we stop the webinar. There'll be a full transcript of the question and answers that went into the question pod provided in the materials section on the webinar's course page, as well as on the FTP site. Thank you for attending. We'll see you at the next webinar.